Scott, you've been to Russia, and we talk about. Donald Trump said that people are in line in Russia at gas stations, and there, I talked with John Helmer. He said that could happen because of mismanagement of something of that sort, but that's not a systematic problem in Russia. They can take it further of a line in Russia, but that doesn't make any sense when it comes to the situation, the whole condition of Russia internally. What is wrong with the mindset of NATO and what they're trying to provide Donald Trump with in terms of information, what they're giving to him in intelligence? What is wrong with that when you went to Russia and you saw it firsthand?
Well, first of all, Europe and NATO don't exist in a world governed by reality. They live in a fantasy world of their own making. We're dealing with a political and economic elite that had bought into the notion of, the European Union being this viable, integrated singularity that could stand on its own 2 feet and challenge the United States, as a globally relevant entity, backed by a transatlantic alliance, NATO, that was supposed to be the strongest in the world. But at the end of the Cold War, there are two problems came into being. One, Europe is just a dysfunctional reality. There is no such thing as a European singularity. There are different nations. Each of these nations have their own priorities. There is an East Europe, a West Europe, an Old Europe, a New Europe, a North Europe, a South Europe. They're all different, and you're not bringing them together. Even when the European Union was relatively healthy, take a look at the Greek crisis, if you remember that. The difference between the two competing, banks, the liberal policies of Paris and the conservative policies of the German, and never the two shall meet. And that was back when the European Union was considered healthy. Today, the European Union is dysfunctional. These two great banks, they don't work anymore. The French bank is busted. The German bank is broke. There is no banking system in Europe anymore. They just make things up as they go along. But these political elites can't admit defeat, because once a politician admits defeat, they get replaced. And so they have to continue to lie to people. And what happens when you have internal problems? You look through external sources. NATO cannot be sustained unless there's a threat. And so we began to expand NATO from the very beginning in the 1990s when Russia was weak. You said that we're going to view Russia's potential. We have to expand to keep Russia down to justify this. So we did all the expansion, all the talking, but that's like, saying I'm going to get in shape, but I buy bodybuilding magazines and I look at the pictures, but I don't go to the gym. And that's what NATO did. They just sat there for decades saying, we're going to be strong, we're going to expand, but they didn't go to the gym. And now we have a situation where the military strength of NATO is atrophied. There is no military strength to NATO, none whatsoever. They can't deploy. They don't have logistics capabilities. And I would advise all the so-called, all your armchair warriors in your audience, I'm not aware of anything they're saying right now, but anybody who doubts me, study logistics, study the art of logistics, study what it takes to go to war. You'll understand why people say that, tactics is for amateurs. Logistics is where you win the wars. That's where your genius is. And study French logistics, study the last major French logistic exercise and how many French troops they were able to move, how far, and how they could sustain them. And suddenly you realize the concept of France sending an expeditionary force into Ukraine is an absolute joke, because they can't do it. The only nation that has global logistics sustainability capabilities is the United States of America. We do it better than anybody else in the world. And we're getting ready to disengage from Europe. So Europe's got no strength. NATO is an absolute joke. But these politicians can't admit defeat. And look at them right now. Look at Macron. France is a basket case. Look at Merz. Germany is collapsing economically as we speak. Look at every nation. Look at Starmer. Even Italy's running into issues. So Europe is not healthy. We're looking at the collapse of the European Union. We've already seen deep fractures within Europe. They're only going to get worse. Economic fractures, political fractures. And NATO itself is incapable of making a unified decision. It's a dysfunctional organization that right now is being, led by the nose, by the Baltics and the Poles. But economic reality will dictate that NATO can't do what they want NATO to do. And once the United States, watch what happens when we pull the heavy division out of Romania. Watch how peaceful the Romanians become. The second the American, big boy says, I'm not backing you up anymore. I'm out. Watch how compliant that part of Europe becomes. You want to watch the Poles become, compliant little boys who pee their pants. America pulls its division, its corps headquarters, division headquarters, and its brigade out of Poland. Then watch what the Poles do. Panic. You want to watch Germany freak out? Pull American troops out of Germany. It's going to happen. We're tired of it. We're tired of Europe. We're tired of the stupidity of Europe. We're not going to play stupid European games. But it's going to happen gradually. We can't do it precipitously. But what we're looking at right now is the end of Europe as we know it. Europe is geographically going to be there, but demographically, what is Europe anymore? With the high immigration rate that goes on, what defines a European country? Are Germans German? Are Swedes Swedes? Are French? Or is it this amalgam of ethnicities that have moved in that don't share the same cultural values? What does it mean to be a Frenchman today? It used to mean that you're sort of Roman Catholic, and you had classic French values. Today, you could be Muslim and have nothing in common with the French kings of the past.
Does Donald Trump feel the threat of letting the war in Ukraine in the hand of Europeans? If someone does something stupid, attacking Russia from Poland, from Germany,
they're not going to. There's no if there, Nima. There's just no if. Literally, there's no if. You cannot articulate a cognizable plan. No one can. How many Polish troops are going to attack Russia, when and where and how? With what army? They don't have one.
That's why they want to bring the United States in. I'm not talking about.
I just told you we're not going to do it. We're done. It isn't going to happen. We're not going to be suckered in. There's not going to be a NATO war against Russia because NATO doesn't have any capability at all. None. Zero. Nothing. It's all advantage Russia. Straight up. So I don't lose too much sleep over that. I more worry about strategic confrontation between the United States and Russia than I worry about a European provocation because Europe is broken. They're broken. Nima, there's not a military in Europe today that can sustain a campaign in Ukraine for longer than a month of meaningful proportions. Logistics. And without the United States, Europe cannot do anything. Nothing. 2,000 French troops. That's what they're talking about. 2,000. Ukraine loses between 2,300 and 3,000 troops a day. So France is willing to provide enough troops to sacrifice on the battlefield for less than 24 hours. And that's it. That's the French commitment. And Russia's going to lose sleep over this. No, there's nothing going to happen from NATO. When the drones flew into Poland, what was the German response? 2 typhoons? Two. The Netherlands, they put in 2 F-35s. Great Britain flew it. That's it. Want to know why? Because to deploy aircraft is an expeditionary capability. That means that you have to leave the base where you operate from and go to another base that's prepared to receive you, maintain your aircraft, fuel your aircraft, do all that support. And Europe has no capability whatsoever to do that. You can't just take a French squadron and fly them to a Polish airfield and operate from the Polish airfield unless you have French infrastructure in place. It doesn't exist. That's the fatal flaw of NATO. It used to be there was interoperability. Back in the 1980s, NATO was designed to be an interoperable force. So one NATO base was like another NATO base, like another NATO base. So if you had to transfer a squadron of F-15s from Spangdahlem, to Bitburg, you could do it without blinking. The Germans could deploy F-104s to any base because the infrastructure was there. We trained to do this. As divisions advanced, logistical trains from a corps could support a German division, they could support an American division, they could support a British brigade. They could do it all because we train that way for interoperability. There is no interoperability today at all. None. A Polish division requires unique support and sustainment requirements separate from that of the American brigade that will be fighting alongside. So that means we need two parallel logistical support capabilities operating on a single line of communication. Do you understand how fatally stupid this is? Because if you know about logistics, you'll know what I'm talking about. You're going to be putting a lot of trucks with a lot of fuel and a lot of ammunition on one highway, and they're all going to die. And when that happens, the forward deployed troops run out of fuel, run out of ammunition, and they get killed. This is the reality of this war. NATO to fight Russia has to go through Ukraine to get to Russia. They will not make it there. They will die before they get there. This is the reality. NATO is a joke. They don't train to do this, and they don't have time to train to do this. It took us decades of concerted effort, spending hundreds of billions of dollars to train NATO to be the army that existed, the military alliance that existed in the late 1980s. The greatest military alliance ever made. Nothing will ever come close to that. But it's gone. It's finished. The NATO of today is not that. They can't do that. They don't have that capability, and they're never going to be able to rebuild that capability because it all hinged on the great United States of America. Back when we had 300,000 troops forward deployed in West Germany, when we had military bases all over West Germany, they don't exist today. With 30,000 troops in Germany, come on, man, we had 300,000. And we could immediately deploy within 10 days another 250,000. We had the equipment already pre-deployed in Germany. All we had to do is fly in the troops, marry up with the equipment. It was all maintained, ready to go, start the engine, fully loaded for combat, go to war. We can't do that today. Not even close. It takes 6 months for an American brigade to receive its warning order to be loaded onto ships and be sailed into Hamburg, where they would then offload, and then they get caught up in a train system because you can't cross borders. There's no customs and control there. They haven't figured that one out. The bridges, the rail, nothing can handle military traffic nowadays. Nothing. It all used to be designed to handle it. Today, nothing handles it. It's a joke, Nima, an absolute tragic joke. So people need to stop giving NATO capabilities that simply don't exist. I don't care how many times a Belgian defense minister wants to puff his chest out and say stupid things. There's only one army in Europe today capable of fighting the Russians, and that's the Ukrainian army, and they're being slaughtered at a rate of 2.3 to 3,000 a day.
Scott, we talk about the perception of the Russian people. You know, there were some sort of argument, if you remember, that people are not happy with the position that the Russian president is taking to respond to the West. What was your understanding?
Argument? There wasn't an argument in Russia that I'm aware of. There was an argument among quasi
here in the West. We were talking about it. We didn't know anything about Russia, but the people who, you know, who follow the Russian media, they were telling.
Well, I think I know a little bit about Russia, Nima. I'm not going to accept the fact that I don't know anything about Russia. I'm pretty comfortable with my knowledge of Russia. A hell of a lot more comfortable with the conclusions I reached than I do listening to Gilbert Doctorow, for instance, or who's the other Roberts is out there. These naysayers. Let's just make it as crystal clear as possible. As crystal clear as possible. Russia is a nation that has a free press. I know that will shock many people, but there's a blogosphere out there of people who blog, and they just like their Western counterparts. They play for clicks. They want views. They generate income from this clicks and views and advertisement. So they say controversial things, and they've made their reputation of being critical about what's going on in the special military operation. Many of these people were aligned with Prigozhin, and were sympathetic to the inflated arguments that he put out condemning Shoigu and Gerasimov. It turned out Shoigu and Gerasimov actually knew what they were doing to fight a war, and it was Prigozhin who was the bad guy and the idiot, and those who supported him were likewise idiots. There's also a school of businessmen. Again, I won't talk. Let's just put it this way: if you're a journalist in Moscow in the 1990s, and that's where you developed your contacts, understand that those contacts are no longer viable today. First of all, most of them have fled to London and the United States and Paris and all that. They're the ones that stayed behind in Moscow. They're in the distinct minority. There is no longer a viable pro-Western political element. It used to be before the special military operation, you could talk 15, 20%, especially in Moscow, St. Petersburg, of people who would be quietly opposed to the policies of Vladimir Putin, who secretly supported the reformist agenda of a Navalny. But see, Navalny was actually an MI6 operative paid for by Mikhail Khodorkovsky. I'll probably butcher his name. But anyways, the former oligarch who got arrested by Putin because he got involved in politics, put in jail.
Kolomokovsky?
Khodorovsky or something. Khodorkovsky or something like that. Begins with a K, ends with a ski, and a lot of things in between. But the point is, he's controlled by the MI6 today, and he runs various things. If you're parroting that, you're a fool. You're a damn fool. Not just that, you're an idiot, because you're supposed to be an expert on Russia, and you should know the roots of what you're talking about. Recruiting Russian friends in the 1990s was very easy to do because everybody was enamored with the West. And they all wanted to hang around with the Western guys. Try to recruit Russian friends today. Good luck. They're not enamored with the West anymore. They sort of see us for who we are. And to think at a time when MI6 is using the immigrant business community to foment unrest and opposition, that you're going to develop your own network of Western-oriented business contacts in Moscow who are going to tell you things about Russia. You understand the stupidity of what I'm saying, because Russia does have a very effective counterintelligence service, and you don't get to engage in whispering games. What you do is you come up with stupid algorithms. Like, for instance, I watched the Russian translation of Judge Napolitano's show, and I look at the comments in there, and I disregard any comment with bad Russian because those are stupid Russians. And I only go with the comments from people who speak Russian well. Those are the higher class comments. And then I disregard any comments from there that are supportive of Putin, and I only focus on the narrow slice of comments that condemn Putin without any regard of where they come from, who they are, and what they are. And that's how I form my judgment. There's Gilbert Doctorow's analysis in a nutshell.